The stars looked wrong through the bridge window of the UES Persistence. Captain Sarah Martinez stared at the unfamiliar patterns of light and felt her stomach drop. After 30 years of looking at star charts, she knew when something was very, very wrong. "Tommy, tell me we're just a little off course," she said to her chief engineer. Tommy Chen looked up from his console with sweat on his forehead. His hands moved quickly over the controls, but his face showed the answer before he spoke. "Captain, we're not just off course. We're nowhere near where we should be." The Persistence was humanity's first real attempt at long-distance space travel. It carried 200 people who had signed up to start a new life on a planet near Proxima Centauri. They had families, children, dreams of building something new among the stars. Now they were lost in space with no idea where they were. "How far off are we?" Martinez asked. Tommy's fingers danced over his keyboard. Numbers scrolled across his screen. His face got paler with each calculation. "Captain, according to these readings, we're about 4,000 light-years from Earth. And we're sitting right in the middle of a solar system that shouldn't exist." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's doctor and science officer, looked up from her station. "The gravitational readings are incredible. There are at least 50 large objects in this system. Some of them are bigger than anything we've ever seen." Martinez felt the weight of 200 lives on her shoulders. These people had trusted her to get them safely to their new home. Instead, she had led them into the unknown reaches of space. But she had learned long ago that panic helped nobody. "All right, people, we're lost, but we're not dead. Let's figure out where we are and how to get home." The bridge crew worked in focused silence. Martinez watched the main screen as it showed the system around them. There were planets, moons, and structures that looked artificial. Some of the objects were massive beyond anything humans had ever built. "Captain," said Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communication station, "I'm picking up signals. A lot of them. Different frequencies, different patterns. This system is full of active technology." Martinez nodded. "Any chance they're human signals that got here before us?" Rodriguez shook his head. "No, ma'am. These are definitely not human." The word hung in the air like a stone. Not human. For all of humanity's dreams about finding life among the stars, they had never actually expected it to happen on their first real journey. Now they were surrounded by it. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez said quietly, "the energy readings from some of these objects suggest technology far beyond what we have. Whatever built these things is much more advanced than we are." Before Martinez could respond, every alarm on the ship started screaming at once. The main screen lit up with red warnings. Objects were moving toward them. "Big objects. Ship contacts," Rodriguez called out. "Multiple contacts approaching from all directions. They're big, Captain, really big." Martinez looked at the tactical display. 12 objects, each one at least 10 times the size of the Persistence, were moving toward them in a perfect formation. Their design was unlike anything in human engineering. They looked like giant birds made of metal and energy, with wings that seemed to be made of pure light. "Incoming transmission," Rodriguez said. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was harsh and filled with anger. The words were translated by the ship's computer, but the emotion needed no translation. "Unknown vessel, you have violated the sacred space of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your destruction." Martinez looked around the bridge. Her crew was scared, but they were looking to her for leadership. She had been in tough spots before during her time in Earth's military. This was different, but the principles were the same. "Stay calm. Protect your people and never give up. Rodriguez, open a channel." "Channel open, Captain." Martinez took a deep breath. "This is Captain Sarah Martinez of the Earth vessel Persistence. We are civilians on a colonization mission. We did not intend to enter your space. Our navigation systems malfunctioned and brought us here by accident. We mean no harm to you or your empire." The response came quickly and was even angrier than before. "Your intentions are irrelevant. You have entered the Eternal Throne System, the most sacred space in Zephyrian territory. This is an unforgivable violation. You will abandon your vessel and submit to imperial justice." Martinez felt her jaw tighten. She had dealt with bullies before, both in the military and in civilian life. The tone was always the same. Do what we say, or we'll hurt you. The problem was that this time the bully had bigger weapons, but Martinez also knew something about bullies. They expected people to be afraid. They expected people to back down. Sometimes the best way to deal with a bully was to refuse to be bullied. I understand that our presence here is unwelcome, she said calmly. However, we will not abandon our ship. We have civilians aboard, including children. This is our home. We are willing to discuss relocating to another system, but we will not surrender our people to your justice for something we did by accident. There was a long silence. Martinez could imagine the alien commanders discussing this unexpected response. Finally, the voice returned, even colder than before. You dare to refuse an Imperial command? Your primitive species will learn respect. You have 1 hour to comply or you will be destroyed. The transmission ended. Martinez looked around the bridge. Her crew was staring at her with a mixture of fear and admiration. She had just told one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy to go to hell. Captain, Tommy said quietly. They have us outgunned by about 1,000 to 1. Martinez nodded. I know, but they don't want to destroy us, Tommy. If they did, we'd already be dead. They want us to be afraid. They want us to give up. So what do we do? Dr. Vasquez asked. Martinez walked to the captain's chair and sat down. She looked out at the alien ships surrounding them. They were beautiful in their own way, but they represented everything she had spent her life fighting against. Bullies with big guns who thought might made right. We don't move, she said simply. Captain? Lieutenant Rodriguez asked. You heard me. We don't move. This is our ship. These are our people. We haven't broken any laws we agreed to follow. If they want to destroy a ship full of civilians because we got lost, that's their choice. But we're not going to make it easy for them. Martinez turned to Tommy. Can you deploy the landing struts? Tommy's eyes went wide. Captain, we're in space. Landing struts won't do anything. They'll do exactly what I want them to do. They'll show these aliens that we're not planning to go anywhere. Deploy them. Tommy's hands moved over his controls. Through the bridge windows, they could see the massive metal supports extending from the bottom of the ship. It was a purely symbolic gesture, but symbols mattered. Now raise our defensive shields to full power, Martinez continued. Captain, our shields won't stop those ships if they really want to destroy us, Dr. Vasquez pointed out. I know, but they'll show that we're serious. Sometimes standing up to a bully is more important than winning the fight. Over the next hour, more alien ships arrived. The 12 that had first surrounded them were joined by dozens more. Martinez watched them take positions around the Persistence like hunters surrounding trapped prey. Captain, Rodriguez said, we're being scanned. Multiple energy beams from different ships. Let them scan. They'll find exactly what we told them. A civilian ship full of colonists who got lost. As the hour deadline approached, Martinez opened ship-wide communications. Her voice reached every person aboard the Persistence. This is the captain. By now you all know our situation. We are surrounded by ships from something called the Zephyrian Empire. They want us to abandon our ship because we accidentally entered their territory. I want you all to know that I have refused their demand. She paused, knowing that her next words would either inspire her people or terrify them. We are not criminals. We are not invaders. We are explorers who made a mistake. I will not hand over 200 innocent people to aliens who threaten to kill us for getting lost. We are going to stay right here, in our home, and let them decide what kind of people they really are. The hour passed. Martinez sat in her captain's chair, waiting. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. They were scared, but they were not running. The alien voice returned. This time it was different. Still angry, but with a note of confusion that hadn't been there before. Human vessel, your time has expired. Why do you not comply with Imperial commands? Martinez smiled slightly. The question told her everything she needed to know. These aliens were used to people being afraid of them. They were used to getting their way through threats. They didn't know how to handle someone who simply refused to be afraid. Because we're not your subjects, she replied calmly. We're human beings with the right to exist. You can destroy us if you choose, but you can't make us abandon our principles. Another long silence. Then, you are either very brave or very foolish. Probably both, Martinez admitted, but we're still not moving. As the hours passed, Martinez realized that something had changed. The alien ships were still there, still surrounding them, but they weren't attacking. They were waiting. And if they were waiting, it meant they were uncertain. Martinez had learned something important during her military career. Sometimes the best weapon wasn't a gun or a missile. Sometimes the best weapon was simply refusing to back down. Bullies depended on fear to get their way. Take away the fear, and suddenly they didn't know what to do. She looked out at the alien ships and felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Not hope that they would escape, but hope that they might actually change something. These aliens ruled through fear and intimidation. What would happen if someone showed the galaxy that their threats were just words? "Captain," Dr. Vasquez said quietly, "what happens now?" Martinez settled back in her chair and smiled. "Now we wait and see how badly they want to be the kind of people who murder families for getting lost." Outside, the alien ships continued their silent watch. Inside the Persistence, 200 human beings continued with their lives, protected by nothing more than their captain's refusal to be afraid. The standoff had begun. Tommy's hands moved over his controls. Through the bridge windows, they could see the massive metal supports extending from the bottom of the ship. It was a purely symbolic gesture, but symbols mattered. "Now raise our defensive shields to full power," Martinez continued. "Captain, our shields won't stop those ships if they really want to destroy us," Dr. Vasquez pointed out. "I know, but they'll show that we're serious. Sometimes standing up to a bully is more important than winning the fight." Over the next hour, more alien ships arrived. The 12 that had first surrounded them were joined by dozens more. Martinez watched them take positions around the Persistence like hunters surrounding trapped prey. "Captain," Rodriguez said, "we're being scanned. Multiple energy beams from different ships. Let them scan. They'll find exactly what we told them. A civilian ship full of colonists who got lost." As the hour deadline approached, Martinez opened ship-wide communications. Her voice reached every person aboard the Persistence. "This is the captain. By now you all know our situation. We are surrounded by ships from something called the Zephyrian Empire. They want us to abandon our ship because we accidentally entered their territory. I want you all to know that I have refused their demand." She paused, knowing that her next words would either inspire her people or terrify them. "We are not criminals. We are not invaders. We are explorers who made a mistake. I will not hand over 200 innocent people to aliens who threaten to kill us for getting lost. We are going to stay right here, in our home, and let them decide what kind of people they really are." The hour passed. Martinez sat in her captain's chair, waiting. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. They were scared, but they were not running. The alien voice returned. This time it was different. Still angry, but with a note of confusion that hadn't been there before. "Human vessel, your time has expired. Why do you not comply with Imperial commands?" Martinez smiled slightly. The question told her everything she needed to know. These aliens were used to people being afraid of them. They were used to getting their way through threats. They didn't know how to handle someone who simply refused to be afraid. "Because we're not your subjects," she replied calmly. "We're human beings with the right to exist. You can destroy us if you choose, but you can't make us abandon our principles." Another long silence. Then, "You are either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both," Martinez admitted, "but we're still not moving." As the hours passed, Martinez realized that something had changed. The alien ships were still there, still surrounding them, but they weren't attacking. They were waiting. And if they were waiting, it meant they were uncertain. Martinez had learned something important during her military career. Sometimes the best weapon wasn't a gun or a missile. Sometimes the best weapon was simply refusing to back down. Bullies depended on fear to get their way. Take away the fear, and suddenly they didn't know what to do. She looked out at the alien ships and felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Not hope that they would escape, but hope that they might actually change something. These aliens ruled through fear and intimidation. What would happen if someone showed the galaxy that their threats were just words? "Captain," Dr. Vasquez said quietly, "what happens now?" Martinez settled back in her chair and smiled. "Now we wait and see how badly they want to be the kind of people who murder families for getting lost." Outside, the alien ships continued their silent watch. Inside the Persistence, 200 human beings continued with their lives, protected by nothing more than their captain's refusal to be afraid. The standoff had begun. 3 weeks had passed since the Persistence first appeared in Zephyrian space, and the situation had grown beyond anything the Empire had ever faced. What started as 12 ships surrounding one small human vessel had become a massive fleet of over 500 Zephyrian warships. The most powerful military force in the galaxy was locked in a staring contest with 200 humans who refused to blink. Admiral Krethak paced the bridge of his flagship, the Talon of Justice. His feathers, normally a brilliant blue-green that marked his high rank, had dulled with stress. In his 300 years of service to the Empire, he had never encountered anything like this situation. "Status report," he demanded from his communications officer. "Sir, the human vessel remains in the same position. Their shields are still active, their landing struts are still deployed, and they continue to ignore all Imperial commands." Krethak's talons clicked against the metal floor. "And the media coverage?" The communications officer's feathers flattened against his head, a sign of extreme discomfort. "Sir, it's spreading across 17 different species networks. The story is being called The Ship That Won't Move and David and Goliath in Space. Some networks are treating it as entertainment, but others what? Others are asking why the mighty Zephyrian Empire can't move one small ship." On the human vessel, life had settled into something resembling normalcy. Captain Martinez had established regular work schedules, meal times, and even entertainment periods. The hydroponics bay was producing fresh vegetables. The children attended classes taught by their parents and other adults. To anyone looking at the daily routine aboard the Persistence, it might seem like they were already settled on their new colony world. Dr. Elena Vasquez made her daily rounds through the ship, checking on the physical and mental health of the colonists. She had expected panic, depression, and despair. Instead, she found something remarkable. The people were handling the crisis with the same steady determination as their captain. "How are you feeling today, Mrs. Chen?" she asked Tommy's wife, Liu, who was working in the hydroponics section. Liu looked up from the tomato plants she was tending. "Better than yesterday. Tommy says the shields are holding fine and these plants are growing faster than expected. If we're going to be stuck here for a while, at least we'll eat well." This attitude was common throughout the ship. The colonists had signed up for a difficult life building a new world. Being surrounded by alien warships was not what they had expected, but it was just another challenge to overcome. Tommy Chen had become something of a hero among the crew. His engineering skills were keeping their shields operational and their life support systems running perfectly. More than that, he had started making improvements to their technology using spare parts and creative thinking. "Captain," Tommy said, as he entered the bridge, "I've managed to boost our shield efficiency by 12%. I also installed some backup power systems using parts from the landing shuttles." Martinez nodded approvingly. "Good work. What's our power situation?" "Excellent, actually. The Zephyrians cut off our access to the local trade routes, but since we never had access to them in the first place, it doesn't matter. Our fusion reactors are running perfectly, and I've set up some solar collectors to supplement our power." Outside, the ship, the Zephyrian fleet, was discovering that blockading humans was more difficult than expected. The humans didn't need their trade routes, didn't depend on their communication networks, and seemed perfectly happy to ignore their existence entirely. The Zephyrians had tried several approaches to force the humans to leave. First, they had attempted to jam the human communications. The humans had simply switched to a quantum entanglement communication system that the Zephyrians couldn't intercept or block. Then they had tried sending boarding parties to force their way onto the human ship. The humans had politely sealed their airlocks and declined to open them. When the Zephyrians had threatened to cut their way in, Captain Martinez had calmly explained that any damage to the ship might harm the civilians aboard, and that would be on the Zephyrians' conscience, not hers. The most frustrating thing for the Zephyrians was that the humans remained unfailingly polite. They didn't insult their captors, didn't make demands, and didn't act like prisoners. They acted like people who had every right to be exactly where they were. High Counselor Zarthus arrived in the system aboard the massive command ship Domination. She was one of the highest-ranking Zephyrians in the Empire, with the authority to make decisions that affected entire sectors of space. She had come to resolve the situation quickly and efficiently. "Admiral Krethak," she said as she reviewed the tactical displays, "explain to me why 500 Imperial warships cannot move one primitive vessel." The Admiral's feathers rustled with embarrassment. "High Counselor, the humans refuse to acknowledge Imperial authority. They claim they have committed no crime because they violated no law they agreed to follow." "And why haven't you simply destroyed them?" "Because," Krethak said carefully, "they are civilians, families with children. If we destroy them, it will be seen across the galaxy as the Empire murdering innocents for an accident." Zarthus studied the image of the human ship on her screen. It was tiny compared to her flagship, barely large enough to hold 200 beings, yet it had made the Empire look weak and foolish. "Open a communication channel with their leader." Captain Martinez responded to the call personally. She appeared on the screen looking calm and professional, not at all like someone whose ship was surrounded by the most powerful military force in known space. "High Counselor," Martinez said politely, "I'm Captain Sarah Martinez." "I understand. You'd like to speak with me." "Captain Martinez, I am High Counselor Zarthus of the Zephyrian Empire. I have come to offer you and your people a solution to this situation. I'm listening. The Empire is prepared to escort your vessel to any system you choose within 50 light-years of here. We will provide you with star charts, supply coordinates for suitable colony worlds, and even offer reparations for the inconvenience you have experienced." Martinez considered the offer. It was more generous than she had expected, and it would get her people to safety. But something about it bothered her. The Zephyrians were offering her everything except the one thing that mattered, most recognition that her people had done nothing wrong. "That's very generous, High Counselor," Martinez said. "But I have to ask, what crime did we commit that requires us to accept reparations?" Zarthus was caught off guard by the question. "You violated Imperial space. By accident. We didn't know your space existed. We certainly didn't know this. System was considered sacred. If someone accidentally walks into your house because they're lost, do you arrest them for trespassing? This is not the same thing, isn't it? We got lost, we ended up somewhere we didn't mean to be, and we're willing to leave once we figure out how to get where we're actually trying to go. But we're not going to accept punishment for getting lost." The High Counselor felt her temper rising. This human was being completely unreasonable. "Captain, you must understand that the Empire cannot appear weak. If we allow you to ignore Imperial commands, others might do the same." Martinez smiled slightly. "High Counselor, with respect, that sounds like your problem, not mine. My problem is protecting 200 people who trusted me to get them safely to their new home. I can't do that by teaching them that bullies get their way when they make threats. You are calling the Zephyrian Empire bullies? I'm calling anyone who threatens to kill families over an accident a bully. What would you call them?" The communication ended abruptly. Zarthus stared at the blank screen, feeling something she had rarely experienced in her long career: complete frustration. The human had turned the conversation around completely, making the Empire sound like the unreasonable party. Aboard the Persistence, Martinez called a meeting of her senior staff. "How are our people holding up?" she asked Dr. Vasquez. "Better than expected. Some stress-related issues, but overall morale is good. The children are actually enjoying the excitement, and the adults seem to take pride in our situation." "Our situation?" Tommy asked. "They're proud that we're standing up to the Empire," Vasquez explained. Word has gotten out to other species. In the galaxy, we're getting messages of support from groups we've never heard of. Lieutenant Rodriguez confirmed this. Captain, we're receiving transmissions from dozens of different species. Most of them are just messages of encouragement, but some are more interesting. How so? Some of them are asking for advice. Apparently, there are other species that have problems with Zephyrian demands and they want to know how we're managing to resist. Martinez felt a chill run down her spine. When they had first arrived in this system, their only goal had been to protect their own people. She was beginning to realize that their actions might have consequences far beyond their single ship. Outside, the Zephyrian blockade had grown even larger. Ships continued to arrive daily, creating a massive traffic jam in the system. The Emperor's personal attention had been drawn to the situation, and resources were being diverted from across the Empire to deal with 200 humans who simply refused to move. The irony was not lost on Martinez. The more ships the Zephyrians sent to intimidate them, the more attention they drew to their own inability to resolve the situation. Every day that passed made the Empire look weaker, and the humans look more determined. Captain, Tommy said during their evening briefing, I've been working on some improvements to our external systems. Would you be opposed to adding a few habitat modules to the ship? Martinez raised an eyebrow. Habitat modules? Well, if we're going to be here for a while, we might as well make ourselves comfortable. I can build them using materials from the cargo hold. Nothing fancy, just some extra living space and maybe a small recreation area. Martinez looked around the table at her senior staff. They were all nodding in agreement. These people weren't just refusing to leave. They were preparing to make this place their permanent home. Do it, she said. But make sure the modules can be jettisoned quickly if we need to run. Tommy grinned. Captain, with respect, I don't think we're going to be running anywhere. As the fourth week of the standoff began, construction crews aboard the Persistence started work on their first expansion module. The Zephyrian fleet watched in amazement as the humans began building additions to their ship. The message was clear. The humans weren't just refusing to leave, they were moving in. The news spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. On countless worlds in hundreds of languages, the story was the same. A tiny group of humans had stood up to the Zephyrian Empire and refused to back down. What had started as a local incident was becoming something much larger and more dangerous to the established order. On the mining world of Korvax Prime, Foreman Grixtar watched the latest news broadcast about the humans. His people, the Korvaxi, had been mining precious metals for the Empire for over 800 years. They worked long hours in dangerous conditions, and most of their profits went directly to Zephyrian tax collectors. Look at them, he said, to his fellow workers as they watched footage of the human ship. Just 200 of them and the whole Empire can't make them move. His friend Theknor clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. They're not even fighting. They're just saying no and meaning it. When was the last time we said no to anything? Grixter asked. The question hung in the air like toxic gas. The Korvaxi had been obedient subjects for so long that the idea of resistance seemed impossible. But watching the humans had planted a seed of an idea. 2 days later, when the Imperial tax collectors arrived for their monthly collection, something unprecedented happened. The workers were not at their posts. Instead, they were gathered in the main assembly hall, watching more news about the humans. Where is everyone? Demanded tax collector Visikan. Why is no one working? Foreman Grixtar stood up slowly. He was not a large being and certainly not a brave one. But the humans had shown him something important. Sometimes courage was not about being fearless. Sometimes it was about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. We're taking a day off, he said simply. You cannot take a day off without Imperial permission. The humans didn't ask permission to park their ship where they wanted. We're not asking permission to stop working when we're tired. It was the first strike in Korvaxi history. Similar scenes were playing out across the Empire. On the ocean world of Delphinia, the aquatic people began ignoring Imperial fishing quotas. When challenged, their leaders simply asked, "What law did we agree to that says you can tell us how many fish to catch from our own oceans?" On the agricultural world of Grethia, farmers stopped sending tribute payments to the Empire. Their reasoning was equally simple. The humans aren't paying tribute and they seem to be doing fine. Emperor Thesakar sat on his throne aboard the massive flagship Eternal Dominion, reading reports that made his ancient blood run cold. 17 different species had begun acts of defiance in the past month. Production was down across 40 systems. 3 sectors had declared themselves autonomous regions and stopped responding to Imperial commands entirely, all because 200 humans had refused to move their ship. How, he asked his advisors, can one small vessel cause such widespread problems? High Counselor Zarthus, who had returned from her failed negotiation with the humans, tried to explain. Your Imperial Majesty, the humans have done something we never anticipated. They have shown the galaxy that our power depends on others, choosing to obey us. Our power depends on our military might. With respect, Majesty, our military might has always been used to enforce obedience. But what happens when someone simply refuses to obey? We can destroy them, but then we look like murderers. We can ignore them, but then we look weak. The humans have found the one position we cannot counter. Emperor Thesakar was 400 years old and had ruled the Empire for over half that time. He had crushed rebellions on 1,000 worlds and never met a challenge he could not overcome through force or intimidation. The idea that a group of lost explorers could threaten his rule was almost impossible to accept. Summon the Grand Admiral, he commanded. Prepare my personal fleet. I will deal with these humans myself. On the Persistence, life had settled into a routine that was both strange and oddly normal. The ship now sported 3 additional habitat modules, a workshop, an expanded hydroponics facility, and a small recreation center complete with a library and children's play area. The colonists had even established a small school for their children, who were learning about alien cultures alongside traditional subjects. Captain Martinez stood in the observation lounge of the new recreation module, watching Zephyrian ships through the transparent aluminum windows. The alien vessels were beautiful in their own way, but she no longer found them threatening. They had been sitting there for over a month without doing anything but watch. Captain, Dr. Vasquez said as she joined Martinez at the window. I've been reviewing our psychological profiles. Do you know what I've found? What's that? Our people are happier now than they were when we left Earth. Martinez turned to look at her chief medical officer. How is that possible? We're surrounded by hostile aliens and trapped in space. That's just it. We're not trapped. We're home. These people signed up to build a new life in a challenging environment. Well, this is certainly challenging, but we're succeeding. We're not just surviving, we're thriving. It was true. The colonists had adapted to their situation with remarkable resilience. They had jobs, community activities, and a sense of purpose. The fact that their community happened to be surrounded by alien warships had become just another aspect of their daily life. Tommy Chen entered the observation lounge carrying a tablet full of engineering diagrams. Captain, I've got some ideas for our next expansion project. What did you have in mind? Well, we've been getting requests from some of the alien species to visit our ship. Not the Zephyrians, obviously, but some of the others who have been sending us support messages. I thought we might build a proper docking facility. Martinez stared at him. Tommy, are you suggesting we turn our ship into a space station? Why not? We're not going anywhere, and we're apparently becoming a symbol of something important to a lot of people. Maybe it's time to accept that and make the best of it. Before Martinez could respond, Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice came over the ship's communication system. Captain, to the bridge, please. We have incoming ships and they're big. Martinez hurried to the bridge where she found her crew staring at the tactical display in amazement. Approaching their position was a fleet of ships that made the previous Zephyrian force look small. At the center of the formation was a vessel so large it had its own gravity field. How big is that ship? Martinez asked. Rodriguez checked his readings twice before answering. Captain, it's over 5 kilometers long. The energy readings suggest it has more firepower than everything we've seen so far combined. And I suppose they want to talk to us? Yes, ma'am. The transmission is coming from the big ship. They're requesting direct communication with you. Martinez took her position in the captain's chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. After a month of dealing with increasingly important Zephyrian officials, they had developed a calm confidence in their captain's ability to handle any situation. Put them through. The figure that appeared on the main screen was clearly different from the other Zephyrians they had encountered, this being radiated power and authority in a way that needed no translation. His feathers were deep gold, marking him as royalty, and his eyes held the weight of centuries. I am Emperor Thesakar, supreme ruler of the Zephyrian Empire. You are the human leader? Martinez stood up, not out of deference but out of respect for meeting another leader. I'm Captain Sarah Martinez of the Earth vessel Persistence. You're a long way from home, Your Majesty. The Emperor was taken aback by her casual manner. Most beings trembled in his presence. This human woman was treating him like an equal. Captain Martinez, your presence in my territory has caused considerable disruption to the peace and order of the galaxy. I have come to resolve this situation personally. I appreciate you taking the time. Would you like to come aboard for dinner? We're having a community meal in about an hour, and you're welcome to join us. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent. In 400 years of rule, no one had ever invited the Emperor to dinner. The very idea was so unprecedented that his advisors didn't know how to react. You are inviting me to dine with you? The Emperor asked. Why not? You came all this way to talk about our situation. Seems like we should be able to have a civilized conversation over a meal. Emperor Thesakar found himself in completely unfamiliar territory. He had expected the humans to finally show proper fear when faced with his personal presence. Instead, their leader was treating him like a neighbor who had stopped by for a visit. Very well, he said, curiosity overcoming centuries of protocol. I will accept your invitation. An hour later, Emperor Thesakar found himself in the strangest situation of his long life. He was sitting at a simple table in the human ship's recreation center, surrounded by colonists who were eating, talking, and laughing, as if the most powerful being in the galaxy was just another dinner guest. Captain Martinez had seated him, next to herself and Dr. Vasquez with several human children across the table. The meal was simple: vegetables from their hydroponics garden, protein from their food processors, and bread baked that afternoon in their small galley. This is pizza, Martinez explained as she served him a slice of the flatbread covered with vegetables and cheese. It's basically peasant food from Earth, but we've always been fond of it. The Emperor took a careful bite. The flavors were, unlike anything in Zephyrian cuisine, simpler but somehow more satisfying. It is pleasant. Mr. Emperor, said 8-year-old Katie Chen, Tommy's daughter, do you live on that really big ship? The adults tensed slightly, but the Emperor found himself smiling at the child's directness. Yes, little one, the Eternal Dominion is my home. Is it lonely? It looks really big for just one person. I have many advisors and servants. That's not the same as friends, Katie pointed out with the brutal honesty of childhood. The Emperor looked around the room. These humans, surrounded by his overwhelming military force, were treating him with casual friendliness. Not the desperate friendliness of people trying to curry favor, but the genuine warmth of people sharing their home with a guest. Captain Martinez, he said quietly, why are you not afraid of me? Martinez considered the question seriously. Should I be? You haven't hurt anyone. You've had the power to destroy us for over a month, but you haven't used it. That suggests to me that you're not the kind of person who hurts innocent people. I have destroyed entire worlds that opposed my will. Were they innocent worlds, or were they places where people were being hurt and needed protection? The Emperor found himself thinking about the worlds he had conquered. Most of them had been ruled by tyrants, slavers, or warmongers. His empire, for all its faults, had brought peace and prosperity to billions of beings. You have a remarkable way of seeing things, Captain. I try to see people as they are, not as they want others to think they are. You could have killed us on the first day, but you didn't. You could have ignored our situation, but you came here personally to try to resolve it. That tells me you're someone who takes responsibility seriously. After dinner, the Emperor walked through the human ship with Captain Martinez. He saw families living together in small quarters, children playing games, adults working on various projects. It reminded him of something he had almost forgotten, what it was like when people chose to be somewhere instead of being forced to stay. "Captain," he said as they stood in the observation lounge, "what would it take for you to leave this system?" Martinez looked out at the Zephyrian fleet surrounding them. "Honestly, an apology." "An apology? Your people have threatened to kill my people for making a mistake. They've called us criminals and primitives. They've tried to force us to abandon our home. A simple apology for the threats and the insults would go a long way." The Emperor stared at her. "You would leave if I apologized?" "I'd consider it, but the apology would have to be real, not just words to get rid of us." Emperor Thisakar returned to his flagship with much to think about. The humans had shown him something he had never seen before, the power of refusing to be impressed by power itself. They had treated him with respect without showing fear, and that combination was more compelling than any amount of flattery from his usual subjects. As his ship departed the system, leaving the blockade in place, the Emperor made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. He opened a communication channel that broadcast across the entire empire. "Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire," his voice reached every inhabited world. "I have met with the human colonists who have made their home in the Eternal Throne system. After careful consideration, I have concluded that these beings have committed no crime worthy of punishment. They are guilty only of being lost, and that is not a crime in any civilized society." The broadcast continued for several minutes, but those opening words were enough to send shockwaves across the galaxy. The Emperor had not apologized, but he had done something almost as significant. He had admitted that the humans might be right. On the Persistence, Captain Martinez smiled as she listened to the broadcast. It wasn't the apology she had asked for, but it was a start. More importantly, it was a sign that even the most powerful beings in the galaxy could learn and grow. The real question was, what would happen next? 6 months had passed since the Persistence first appeared in Zephyrian space, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Galactic Stock Exchange had lost 23% of its value as uncertainty spread through the economic systems that had been stable for centuries. 3 entire sectors had declared independence from the Empire, inspired by what they called the human example. The situation had grown far beyond a simple diplomatic incident. It had become a crisis that threatened the very foundation of galactic civilization. On the neutral space station Harmony's Edge, representatives from 12 different species gathered in an emergency session. The meeting was secret, held in a shielded conference room where no communications could enter or leave. The beings around the table represented some of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, and they were all deeply worried. Ambassador Thylex of the Andromedan Coalition spoke first. Her crystalline body flickered with nervous energy as she addressed the group. "The situation with the humans has destabilized everything. Our trade routes are disrupted, our alliances are being questioned, and entire worlds are refusing to honor treaties that have stood for millennia." Senator Vrak of the Tau Ceti Republic nodded his massive head. "My people are asking why they should follow Galactic Council decisions when these humans can simply ignore the most powerful empire in known space." "That's exactly the problem," said Trade Minister Zeflak of the Merchant Guilds. "The humans have exposed a fundamental weakness in how we've organized galactic society. Everything depends on voluntary compliance with established authority. But what happens when someone simply chooses not to comply?" Admiral Kuthara of the Free World's Defense Force leaned forward on her 6 arms. "The Zephyrians built their empire on the assumption that overwhelming force would make resistance impossible. The humans have proven that assumption wrong. But they haven't actually fought the Zephyrians," pointed out Dr. Silktar, the renowned political theorist from Rigel University. "They've done something much more dangerous. They've shown that the Empire's power only exists as long as people believe in it." The uncomfortable truth was spreading across the galaxy like a virus. The Zephyrian Empire's strength had always come from others' willingness to submit to their authority. Take away that willingness, and the Empire became just another group of beings with big ships and loud voices. Meanwhile, on Earth, the home planet of humanity was dealing with its own crisis. The news of the Persistence's situation had reached Earth months ago, and the reaction had been swift and decisive. Admiral David Park was leading a small fleet of 5 ships towards Zephyrian space, carrying 2,000 additional colonists, and enough supplies to establish a permanent settlement. "Admiral," said Captain Lisa Wong from the bridge of the UES Defiance, "we're approaching the edge of Zephyrian territory. Long-range sensors show massive ship concentrations around our target system." Admiral Park studied the tactical displays. The Zephyrian blockade had grown to include over 800 ships, making it one of the largest fleet concentrations in galactic history. "Any signs that they plan to stop us from entering the system?" "No, sir. If anything, they seem to be pulling back to give us room to pass." Park smiled grimly. The Zephyrians were caught in an impossible position. If they attacked Earth ships coming to reinforce the colonists, they would be starting a war with humanity. But if they allowed the reinforcements through, they would be admitting that their blockade was meaningless. Back on the Persistence, Captain Martinez was dealing with her own growth problems. The ship had expanded far beyond its original design, now sporting 12 additional modules that housed workshops, expanded living quarters, a proper medical facility, and even a small manufacturing plant. What had started as a colony ship had become something entirely new, a space-based community that was completely self-sufficient. "Captain," Tommy Chen said as he entered her office with his daily engineering report, "we've got the new docking bay operational. The first trade ship is scheduled to arrive tomorrow." Martinez looked up from the report she was reading. "Trade ship? The Rigelians want to exchange some of their quantum processors for our agricultural techniques. Apparently, our hydroponic systems are more efficient than anything they've seen." It was true. The humans had been forced to develop incredibly efficient systems to survive in their confined space. What had started as a survival necessity had become a technological advantage that other species wanted to learn from. "How many species have requested trade relationships?" Martinez asked. Tommy consulted his tablet. 17 so far, and the number keeps growing. Dr. Vasquez thinks we should start charging docking fees. Dr. Elena Vasquez had become the Persistence's unofficial ambassador to the various alien species that came to visit. Her medical training had given her skills in dealing with different physiologies, and her natural diplomacy made her perfect for handling interspecies relations. "Speaking of trade," Tommy continued, "we've also received a formal request from the Delphinian Collective. They want to establish a permanent diplomatic mission aboard our station." "Our station?" "Well, that's what everyone's calling it now. New Geneva Station, after that old Earth city that used to host peace negotiations." Martinez walked to the window of her office and looked out at the bustling activity around their ship. Alien vessels came and went daily, bringing visitors, traders, and diplomats. The Zephyrian blockade was still there, but it had become largely irrelevant. Ships simply flew around it to reach the human settlement. "Tommy," she said quietly, "what have we become? Something new, I think. Something the galaxy didn't know it needed." The door chimed, and Lieutenant Rodriguez entered with a concerned expression. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Park. The Earth fleet has arrived at the edge of the system." Martinez felt a mixture of relief and worry. Relief that help had arrived, but worry about what the arrival of Earth warships might do to the delicate balance they had established. "Put him through." Admiral Park's weathered face appeared on the wall screen. Behind him, Martinez could see the bridge of a modern Earth warship, much more advanced than her own exploration vessel. "Captain Martinez, this is Admiral David Park of the Earth Colonial Defense Force. I'm here with 5 ships and 2,000 additional colonists, along with supplies and equipment for permanent settlement. What's your status?" "Admiral, we're doing well. The situation is stable and we've established good relations with most of the local species. The Zephyrians are still maintaining their blockade, but they haven't interfered with our activities for several months." "Good to hear. Captain, I have to ask, Are you ready to be evacuated? Earth is prepared to negotiate for your safe return. Martinez felt her heart sink. After all this time, after everything they had built, Earth still thought of them as refugees waiting to be rescued. Admiral, with respect, we don't want to be evacuated. This is our home now. We've built something important here and we're not ready to abandon it. Park's expression showed his surprise. Captain, you're surrounded by hostile alien forces. This can't be a safe place to raise families. Admiral, I'd like you to meet some of our neighbors before you make that judgment. Would you be willing to visit our station? I think you might be surprised by what we've accomplished. 3 hours later, Admiral Park stood in the main docking bay of what the locals were calling New Geneva Station, watching the most remarkable sight of his military career. Humans and aliens worked side by side, loading and unloading cargo, sharing meals, and discussing technical problems with the casual familiarity of old friends. This is incredible, he said to Captain Martinez as they walked through the station. How did you manage to build all of this? We had to. The Zephyrians wanted us to leave, but we couldn't leave, so we decided to make the best of our situation. They passed a classroom where human children were learning alien languages from a visiting Andromedan teacher. In the workshop section, a team of humans and Rigelians were collaborating on some kind of advanced technology project. The medical bay had been expanded to accommodate a dozen different species, with Dr. Vasquez consulting on alien physiologies she had learned about. Through necessity, Captain, Admiral Park said slowly, you realize what you've done here, don't you? We've survived. No, you've done much more than that. You've created the first truly integrated interspecies community in galactic history. This isn't just a human colony that trades with aliens. This is something entirely new. That evening, Admiral Park attended a community meeting in the station's main assembly hall. The room was filled with humans and aliens, all participating in discussions about everything from work schedules to educational curricula to expansion plans. The question before us tonight, Captain Martinez said from the podium, is whether we should begin construction on the orbital manufacturing facility that the Korvaxi have proposed. The advantages are obvious. We'd have the capability to produce our own starship components, and we'd be providing jobs for several species. The disadvantage is that it would make us a much larger target if the political situation changes. A Rigelian engineer raised one of her forearms. Captain Martinez, if I may suggest, the political situation has already changed. We are the political situation. Every day we continue to exist and prosper. We prove that the old ways of organizing galactic society are not the only ways. There was general agreement from around the room. These beings had come together not because of ancient treaties or political pressure, but because they had found something valuable in working together as equals. After the meeting, Admiral Park spoke privately with Martinez in her office. Sarah, I came here prepared to evacuate refugees. Instead, I find a functioning society that's more advanced than most planetary colonies. What are you saying, Admiral? I'm saying that maybe Earth should be asking you for advice instead of offering you rescue. What you've built here could be the model for a new kind of galactic civilization. Martinez looked out at the lights of the various ships and habitats that now surrounded the original Persistence. It wasn't what we planned, Admiral. We just refused to give up when things got difficult. Sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes refusing to quit changes everything. The next morning brought news that would change the situation once again. Emperor Thisakar was returning to the system, this time with an even larger fleet. But intelligence reports suggested this wasn't another show of force. The Emperor was coming to negotiate. More importantly, he was coming alone, without his usual council of advisors. Whatever he planned to discuss with the humans, he wanted to do it personally. Captain Martinez stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching the approaching Imperial fleet. After 6 months of standoff, 6 months of growth and change, the moment of final confrontation was approaching. But she was no longer the captain of a lost colony ship. She was the leader of a community that had proven something important to the galaxy. That cooperation was stronger than domination, and that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't the ability to make others move. It was the decision to never move yourself. The question was, what would the Emperor of the galaxy's most powerful empire do when faced with that truth? 2 years had passed since the UES Persistence first appeared in Zephyrian space, and the galaxy was a very different place. The standoff that had begun with one small ship had grown into something no one could have imagined. A complete transformation of how different species related to each other across the stars. New Geneva Station had become a sprawling complex of interconnected habitats, manufacturing facilities, research laboratories, and cultural centers. What had started as a desperate attempt to survive had evolved into the most successful interspecies community in galactic history. 50,000 beings from over 30 different species now called the station home. Captain Sarah Martinez, now formally recognized as Governor Martinez of the New Geneva Autonomous Zone, stood in her office aboard the original Persistence, which had become the symbolic heart of the growing community. Through her window she could see the latest addition to the station, a massive shipyard where humans and aliens worked together to build vessels using technologies that no single species had possessed alone. "Governor," said her assistant, a young Rigelian named Zethka, "Emperor Thisakar has requested a meeting. He'll be arriving within the hour." Martinez nodded. The Emperor's visits had become a regular occurrence over the past year, as the two leaders worked to establish what historians were already calling the New Geneva Accords, the first interspecies Bill of Rights in galactic history. The transformation hadn't been easy. The first year after the standoff had been chaotic, with dozens of species declaring independence from various empires and alliances. The Galactic Stock Exchange had crashed completely before reorganizing around new principles of voluntary cooperation rather than enforced compliance. But from that chaos had emerged something remarkable, a new form of galactic organization based on mutual benefit rather than domination. The Zephyrian Empire still existed, but it was no longer absolute. Species could choose their level of participation in imperial society, and many had chosen to establish relationships similar to what the humans had created. Dr. Elena Vasquez entered Martinez's office carrying a medical report. At 62, she was showing her age, but her work as New Geneva's chief medical officer and interspecies health coordinator had given her a purpose she had never expected to find. "Sarah," she said, using the informal address that had become common among the station's founding members, "the health statistics are remarkable. Interspecies cooperation has led to medical advances that none of our races could have achieved alone. Life expectancy is up across the board, and we've eliminated 17 different diseases through collaborative research. Any problems I should know about?" "The usual minor conflicts between species with different social customs, but nothing serious. The integration protocols we developed are working well." Those protocols had become another export from New Geneva Station. Dozens of worlds were using the community's methods for helping different species work together effectively. What had started as a survival necessity had become a science. Tommy Chen, now the station's chief engineer and director of technological development, entered the office with his usual stack of project reports. At 55, he had become one of the most respected engineers in known space, not because of his individual brilliance but because of his ability to coordinate the efforts of engineers from many different species. "Governor, the new habitat ring is ahead of schedule. We'll be ready to house another 10,000 residents by the end of the month. Also, the Andromedan Collective has formally requested permission to establish their regional headquarters here." Martinez smiled. "How many governments want to put their headquarters on our station now?" 17, not counting the various trade organizations and research institutes. We're running out of space for all the diplomats. The growth of New Geneva Station had created its own problems. Success attracted attention, and attention brought both opportunities and challenges. The station had become so important to galactic commerce and diplomacy that its neutrality was now protected by mutual agreement among dozens of species. "Any word from Earth?" Martinez asked. "Admiral Park's latest report shows that Earth has established 47 colonies using our methods. The voluntary cooperation model is spreading throughout human space, and other species are requesting human assistance in establishing their own communities. It was ironic, Martinez thought. Humanity had accidentally stumbled into becoming teachers for the galaxy, not through superior technology or military might, but through their simple refusal to be bullied. The door chimed, announcing the arrival of Emperor Thisakar. The ancient Zephyrian leader entered alone, as had become his custom for these meetings. His golden feathers had dulled somewhat with age and stress, but his bearing still commanded respect. "Governor Martinez," he said formally, then smiled slightly. "Sarah." "Your Imperial Majesty," she replied, then returned his smile. Dice. Their relationship had evolved from hostility through grudging respect to something approaching friendship. The Emperor had proven to be a being capable of growth and change, while Martinez had learned to appreciate the complexities of governing on a galactic scale. "I have news," the Emperor said as he took his usual seat across from Martinez's desk. "The Galactic Council has formally ratified the new Geneva Accords. Every major species in the galaxy has agreed to the basic principles of voluntary association and mutual respect." Martinez felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The Accords represented 2 years of careful negotiation, compromise, and patience. They established the right of any group of beings to form their own communities without interference, while also creating frameworks for resolving disputes peacefully. "What about enforcement?" she asked. "That's the beauty of it. There is no enforcement in the old sense. The Accords are based on the principle you taught us. You can't force someone to cooperate, but you can make cooperation more attractive than conflict." It was true. The new Geneva model had proven that voluntary cooperation produced better results than coerced compliance. Communities that followed the Accords were more prosperous, more stable, and more innovative than those that clung to the old authoritarian models. "This," Martinez said quietly. "Do you ever regret not destroying us on that first day?" The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, looking out the window at the bustling activity of the station. Ships from dozens of species moved in carefully coordinated patterns, bringing goods, people, and ideas from across the galaxy. "Sarah, destroying you would have been the greatest mistake in the history of my empire. You and your people didn't just refuse to move. You showed us all a different way to live." That evening, Martinez walked through the main promenade of New Geneva Station, observing the daily life of the community she had helped create. Human children played with alien friends in the Central Park. Scientists from multiple species collaborated on research projects in the laboratories. Artists created works that combined techniques and perspectives from across the galaxy. At the memorial wall, she paused to read the names of the colonists who had died during their journey to this place. Not many, considering what they had accomplished, but each loss had been felt deeply by the community. Their sacrifice had meaning now, as part of the foundation of something greater than any of them had imagined. "Governor Martinez?" A young voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Katie Chen, now 10 years old and fluent in 6 alien languages. The girl who had asked the Emperor if he was lonely had grown up to become one of the station's most gifted young diplomats. "Hello, Katie, how are your studies going?" "Great. My Andromedan teacher says I have a natural talent for quantum mathematics, but I wanted to ask you something." "What's that?" "My dad told me that when we first got here, you told the aliens we weren't going to move. Is that really what happened?" Martinez smiled at the memory. "That's exactly what happened. Why didn't you just leave when they told you to? Wouldn't that have been easier?" It was a good question, and one that Martinez had been asked many times over the past 2 years. The answer had evolved as she had come to understand the full implications of their actions. "Katie, sometimes the easy thing and the right thing are not the same. We could have left, but that would have meant accepting that bullies get their way when they make threats. More importantly, it would have meant giving up on the idea that we had a right to exist where we chose to exist. And now look what we built." Martinez agreed. As Katie ran off to join her friends, Martinez continued her walk through the station. In the cultural center, a Zephyrian poet was reciting verses about the beauty of voluntary cooperation. In the engineering section, a mixed team was working on a new type of faster-than-light drive that combined principles from multiple species, technologies. She ended her walk at the observation deck where she had spent so many hours during those first dangerous weeks. The Zephyrian ships were still there, but they were no longer a blockade. They were the official protectors of the station, ensuring that the neutrality agreements were respected. Admiral Krethak, the original Zephyrian commander who had demanded their surrender, now served as the station's security coordinator. He had become one of Martinez's most trusted advisors, bringing military experience and strategic thinking to the challenges of managing a community that represented dozens of different cultures. "Governor," he said as he joined her at the observation window, "the evening reports show continued growth in all sectors. Trade is up 12% from last month, and we have applications from 3 new species requesting permanent resident status. Any problems?" "Minor territorial disputes between the Korvaxi and Grathian communities, but nothing that can't be resolved through our standard mediation processes." Those mediation processes were another innovation that had spread throughout the galaxy. Rather than imposing solutions from above, the new Geneva system encouraged communities to work out their own solutions with the help of trained mediators from multiple species. "Admiral," Martinez said, "do you remember that first day when you demanded our surrender?" Krethak's feathers rustled, and what Martinez had learned was the Zephyrian equivalent of embarrassed laughter. "I remember being very angry that a primitive species dared to ignore Imperial commands." "What changed your mind about us?" "You did, Governor. All of you. You proved that strength isn't about having the biggest weapons or the loudest voice. It's about knowing what you believe in and refusing to compromise those beliefs, even when it's difficult." As the artificial night cycle began on the station, Martinez made her way back to her quarters aboard the original Persistence. The small cabin where she had spent those first desperate weeks had been expanded and upgraded, but she had insisted on keeping it as her primary residence. It reminded her of where they had come from and what they had achieved. Before going to sleep, she made her final log entry of the day, a tradition she had maintained since their first arrival in Zephyrian space. Governor's log, day 847 since arrival. New Geneva Station continues to grow and prosper. Today we welcomed our 50,000th permanent resident and celebrated the second anniversary of the voluntary cooperation treaty with the Rigelian Collective. Tomorrow, a delegation from the previously unknown Helix Nebula species will arrive for their first diplomatic contact with galactic civilization. They specifically requested to meet with us because they had heard that we were the community that never moved when told to move. I've been thinking about what we've accomplished here, and I realize that we didn't set out to change the galaxy. We just set out to protect our people and preserve our right to exist. But sometimes when you stand up for your own rights, you end up defending everyone else's rights too. The children born on this station will grow up in a galaxy where cooperation is stronger than domination, where diversity is celebrated rather than feared, and where no one has to move just because someone with bigger weapons tells them to. We kept our promise. We didn't move. And in staying still, we helped the galaxy learn how to move forward. Martinez closed the log and looked out her window one final time. The lights of New Geneva Station stretched out in all directions, a constellation of hope in the darkness of space. Somewhere among those lights, beings from dozens of worlds were living and working together, proving every day that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't the ability to make others move. It was the decision to never move yourself, and they never had.